I
Tanya.
am. Yes.
Okay, the time is for you. I love your sharing. It's powerful. It's absolutely powerful.
Enormous. Instantaneous.
You were talking about people having some limitation or not able to share their story. I want you to take some time to explain that. What are some of the limitations that you think people have for which they are not sharing their story? Because now again, you see the importance of storytelling. Of course, you are a publisher. You know that. I don't need to tell you that because I'm asking you because I want the audience to learn from you. That is the essence, no? That storytelling is a powerful instrument that we must use. It's not an option. Teresa is saying it is not an option. Teresa, thank you for highlighting that. It is deliberate. We need to deliberately tell this story. But why are some people not able to do that? What have you found? Please share with us.
That is such a great question. And I believe the biggest thing is mindset. Oftentimes we can think something, we want to do it, but then our mind tells us who's going to read that story, who's going to want to read my boring story. And these things can go on and on in our minds. But Leon Brown says it all begins and ends with our mind. What we give power to has the power over you if you allow it. So I believe the biggest thing that I've come across when I'm speaking to people is their mindset. And when we serve notice to that and think about, like we shared already today, about our voices matter and why we're sharing our stories is to leave that legacy, etc., is then we can then overcome those barriers and look at why we're sharing it, because it's going to help other people. And then also, depending on what type of story you're sharing, it can be about privacy concerns. And then it is about how you share that story. And like we just talked about, show and not tell, etc., etc. And then there's the emotional impact. People writing their story and there's a lot of emotions. How can I get past that? And there's so many ideas around that. And if you want to share your story and there is emotional impact in your story, working with a coach can help you get through that. But also as well, it's a healing process for you as well, which is really important. And there can be also a lack of support when you're writing your book. And this is why I encourage people to get themselves a coach, because you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. They can push you a lot further.
Are you an entrepreneur struggling to stand out in a crowded market? Your secret weapon is your story. Discover how to make your competition irrelevant by owning your story. Want to learn more? Check out our signature program, Own Your Story, a 5-week training to reshape your narrative. The link is what you see on your screen, academy.aclasses.org/story. Now back to the conversation.
So those are some of the things around barriers as to why people won't share their story. But we, as you've heard today, we encourage you to serve notice to those limiting beliefs and get your story written.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. But I know somehow somebody have already said something similar to what I'm about to ask you. But it's still important anyway, because you have to do with the benefit, no? Yeah, we can write for the love of it. I love that. But I want you to share with people. Of course, you are a book publisher. You should have an answer to that. What are the benefits? What is it for the people to write? Why should they take the time to write? Share with them.
Wow. There is a long list as to why we feel it's important to share your story. One, we mentioned about the legacy. Your words will outlive you and it will live on. And it will be represented in the right way when you share your story. This is why we're encouraging you to do that. And this can be put in the, in history. Your words are there forever. It can be in the schools, your children, your grandchildren, etc., etc. People are reading those words when you have passed on. And then also, depending on the type of stories that we're writing, it can be also great for self-reflection. And that's another key thing, which I feel is important as to why you get to share your story, because it allows for self-exploration and understanding and helping individuals to make sense of their experience and their emotions, which I think is key. And then another thing that I'll mention is about the emotional healing, like I've just skirted around it before, and is expressing your thoughts and your feelings through writing. It can be very therapeutic, and that's aiding the processing of trauma and reducing the stress. And then also as well, it's about personal growth. I'm very big on personal growth, personal development, developing yourself always, and it fosters that personal development in identifying patterns of learning from past experiences, gaining insights into your behavior and choices. And when you write your stories, people are reading them and then they can benefit from that. And then also it's about the empowerment. Sharing a story can provide empowering other people, providing a sense of control and ownership of your narrative. And for example, one of my clients I shared before shared her story about breaking free. It was about coercive control, 18 years of that relationship. And she talks about why she was in that relationship for a long time, etc., etc. But now that she shared her story, she's now in history, in the curriculum, in schools, in 25 schools in Ipswich, sharing about coercive control, educating young people to discover what signs, symptoms, how to say no, etc., etc. Like we talked about the legacy creation, and it improves communication skills, it inspires and motivates, it increases awareness, and the list goes on. Have I convinced you yet to write your story? You need to do it because your voice matters.
Tanya, thank you. I appreciate that. Of course you do. You do. You did convince me about that. Of course, I'm convinced. I don't have any doubt about that, though. Thank you for that. All right, the Sister Dennis, please get ready. It's your turn. But just before I want to point out that it's really important. You know, when Lady E was talking before, she made mention of the fact that she had written a book, which after she had published it, is not accepted as one of the book to be read in her state. You don't want to underestimate that. I mean, you don't want to underestimate the importance of that. That because she had written a book, her name will now be in the memory of all the children that are going to school in that particular state in Nigeria. So we're not talking about like 2 or 3 people who will just stumble upon your book. You see, these things, I look at it to be of high value. It is important for me. You see, in 2015, I wrote a book, I titled Amended the Stream Water. Of course, I did a little bit of promotion, taking it here and there, going to university, going to cultural centers here to talk about it. Even though the book really have nothing to do with immigration, it's not about immigration book. I've written other books about immigration here, and I have more to write again. But you see, at a point, the book was taken to be one of the books recommended for children to be read at the university here in Verona. You could find it at the university website. But this is me. I've never gone to any university, but having my book recommended to be read at the university and placed at the university website, that is something of honor. Okay, I'm saying that if the book was actually garbage, because I didn't pay them money, I didn't bribe anybody, they like it, that is why they put it out there. They didn't write it for me so that I would say, okay, they write it for themselves, so they just put I wrote it myself. Which means there is value in that. Because how you know that there is value in what you are doing in terms of business, for example, whenever we're talking of business, is that you do something for somebody, the person willingly pay you for it, and the person also come to tell you, oh, thank you, I like what you have done for me after they have paid you. You don't need any other way to say what I have done is valuable, because this valuable is coming from the people that you are serving. So it is sacrosanct that within the African diaspora, we continue to write for those of us who know how to write. Because one of the things that I found out in my research here in Italy, I know this is true in anywhere you go, is that there are some people who will never be able to write. This is true, because at least you need a minimum to be able to write. Writing, meaning, okay, you need to organize this thought. the thing that is going on in your mind, you need to organize it. You need to put it in a way that it makes sense to somebody. It's not just, you don't just throw me the alphabet and say organize it as it works. It's not going to work like that. So there are some people who are able to write. So those people need to write, please. It is important for us. All right. This is the question that I was thinking. So that is for Dennis Robert. So you were saying that at a point you weren't reading book by Black authors. This was, if I get you correct, because of the message that they were promoting at the time. But later, of course, you changed your mind and you started to read a lot of it. And of course, you even made a lot of mention of these books. The question is, it is journey of yours. What did you learn? I mean, I'm interested in what make you to change your mind. What did you learn in this process? Help us understand that, because you know why? There are many people in the diaspora who are at that stage where you were then, who want to transit. They don't know how. They don't know how. But by sharing your experience, they will figure it out. Please share with us.
Yeah, Obehi, thank you. Exactly. You know, thinking about this, I remember attending a conference last year, the Black Book Festival. I think it was the Black Book Festival, and listening to an author speaking about her writing process. And this is an author that had won awards, done really well. I think she had recently published her second book. And, you know, working with some of the biggest publishers, well, kind of publishers with real big reach out there. And she spoke about the process of writing her book and how it had taken her 10 years to write her book. She spoke about her struggle to put her ideas on the page and some of the things that was going through her mind while she was writing. And while I was listening to her, I really recognized the struggle that she was going through. A lot of people have spoke about it as the writing block. Sorry, I think I can hear some background noise. Is that coming from me or? All right. She spoke about, she kind of like looked at it as though it was writing block. But personally, I think writing block is a kind of throwaway phrase that we use to perhaps to explain many different reasons why it may be that you're struggling to put your story down on the page, to get your thoughts down on the page. And I recognized it as more her struggling with her writing identity, her writing voice, more that she was uncomfortable with or hadn't really looked at the influences that had made her the writer that she is, the person that she is. And I looked at it in that way because I recognized my own journey, my own experience in that, where I was coming to this place of writing. I mean, I had this job. I was working in journalism for about 13 years. I had this job. I was being paid as a writer. I was being paid as an editor. But yet still there was this stuff that was going on in the background because I hadn't really, I hadn't really kind of like tackled that. I hadn't asked myself the questions about, how did I become the writer that I am? What was it that influenced me in that sense? So I think that once I realized what was going on in the background, once I realized what was influencing me, the environment that had shaped me, it enabled me to be able to come and to make more conscious decisions, to be much more intentional about how I was going to turn up on the page, to feel more in control of what I was writing about, what I wanted to talk about. It gave me more freedom in that sense. It helped me to understand who I was. And you mentioned earlier on that, from the Black people from the diaspora, we don't all come from the same, we're not a homogenous group. We have different experiences, different interests, different beliefs. And, there's all of this kind of like variety and diversity amongst us, even as Black people. And, so we're on this journey, and many of us are on a different part of the journey, different stages of the journey. And I think that what my experience said to me was that there comes a time when you do need to ask yourself those questions. You need to explore what the influences are around, why you write about the things you write about, and where what were the narratives that shaped you in that sense, and to be able to dismantle them. Because until you begin to ask yourself those questions, you can't begin to dismantle them. You can't begin to challenge them. And so you have to allow yourself that space, that time, to kind of challenge what those things are. What are those influences in the background? And that's what that taught me. It taught me to be able to look at that, to embrace that as part of my journey, and to be able to challenge those things so that I can free my voice, so that I can come at this process, this journey of writing from a more intentional, more authentic, more decisive, kind of mindset. So I would say that that's what I learned. That's why I changed my approach to how I look at myself as a writer and look at my writing journey, and to support those that I work with as an editor, as a coach, as a creative writing teacher. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. Of course, at the point, we're going to have to question ourselves, question everything. And I think we need to do that, because until we do that, we haven't matured yet. Because we get to a certain level of maturity that we are able to evaluate this world, our life, the way it is. I think it is wrong for us to give the responsibility of defining who you are to somebody else, or to an institution, or to some other people. When you are a child, you cannot do that because you are a child, no? But if you do that all your life, you always identify yourself based on what other people tell you all your life, it means you have been a child all your life. You get to a point you say, okay, yes, from this moment on, this is how I want to see myself, because I don't want you to just like me for what you see. Like me for what I present to you. If you don't like me, it's okay. My life it's not about you. I am living to make a contribution in this world, not to make a contribution to just one person. If that person doesn't like me, it's okay. You move to the next one. All right, that is something important that you said, that I want you to reflect on that and help us on how other people can be helped. I think you call it writer's identity. Now, my curiosity is, how do you develop that writer's identity? What should people do to find their own writer identity?
I mean, when I think about it for myself, I think it was, for me, it started with hearing something deep inside that was asking questions, that was something deep inside that was uncomfortable. Like, why is it that I'm struggling? Or why is it that when I'm in a room with other journalists that I don't want to put my hand up to ask a question? There's something inside, I think, that's almost tapping at you or calling to you to be acknowledged. It's asking for your attention. There's a gap there, there's a lack there, there's something there, some work there that you need to do. And I think it's kind of answering that voice that's inside you, that's asking you to explore something, to kind of delve a little bit deeper into who you are. So I think it's, first of all, being true to that voice. In order for you to really write a book that's powerful, you need to come at that from a place of ownership. You need to come at it from a place of power and of authenticity. So for me, that was the first step. And then it is familiarizing yourself with the environment that shaped you, familiarizing yourself with some of the histories. For me, it was looking at some of the, there's an author, I may have a little bit of problem in pronouncing his name, Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He's a Kenyan writer, but he spoke about, growing up with the village, telling the stories, in the African village, telling the stories and the stories that he grew up with, and then suddenly the British came and they imposed their institutions. They kind of, forbade them from speaking their own native languages, and they prioritize English over everything else. And he spoke about all of these experiences that he went through. And this was really an eye opener for me, because I'd never really read about, what the mechanics, I should say, of, I'd say, colonialism, of what the mechanics were. I never read about it, of how the language was desecrated. Native languages were desecrated, and for me that was an eye opener. That helped me to see the legacy, or the another history and another story of.
Thank you for watching. Are you enjoying the video? Let us know in the comment section. My mission is to help professionals like you to own their story. What would I do for you, you might ask? Well, it helps you make your competition irrelevant. Want to learn more? Check out our signature program, Own Your Story, a 5-week training to reshape your narrative. The link is what you see on your screen, academy.aclasses.org/story. Now back to the conversation.
The things that were important. So I think it's engaging with those narratives, finding out what happened, finding out how those things influenced the education that shaped you, or even your parents' education. For me, as a Black British person, my parents coming from the Caribbean were impacted by this process as well. So that would have been handed down. And then once you've being able to engage with that story, then it's making a conscious decision to break away from it. Some people mentioned earlier on about re-embracing languages and histories, culture that you may have lost or disconnected yourself from, recreating different genres. Somebody mentioned earlier on as well. We at the University of Goldsmiths, we held a conference that was called speculative writing, Black speculative writing, and that again was something that I wasn't familiar with. Speculative writing and Afrofuturism, and some of the genres around there, the storytelling around there, recreating things to reconnect people to the diaspora, but also creating a kind of story that doesn't exist in our world. For example, I think the series on Netflix, Bridgerton, is an example of that, because she talks about period drama. That story is all set around period drama of Black people being part of this court, this group of what you call it, the ton, in its English society, and it's telling a story that that it's not really part of our world, but it's wonderful to look at what might have been, or what could have been, and what was in a sense in parts of African history that we've lost. So it's first of all, embracing it for yourself, investigating that environment, understanding how that environment shaped you, and then looking at how you break away from that, how you own your own narrative, how you explore all of who you are. We're not a single story, and even in a single writer, single author, you're not a single story. There's many different things that you can write about as a writer. You don't necessarily have to stick to one genre or one type of story or one subject or whatever. It's exploring all that you are, and you can do that much more powerfully when you've done the work, the background work, the deep work, to dig in and to find out what shaped you, so that you can then look it in the eye, almost like a puppet. It's like a ventriloquist that puts their hand up the puppet and controls everything that the puppet says, everything that the puppet believes. But now you can take that puppet and manipulate it for yourself. You might not necessarily throw away everything that has been part of that experience, but you can definitely use it as material for building your writing career, and writing about the stories that you want to create. So that's how I look at it. It's a systematic process that you've got to go through, but both, first of all, to recognize, and then to challenge, and then to recreate that writing voice from a place of intention and awareness of who you are and what shaped you.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I love all those different dynamics that you put into it there. Also because, one thing is to see the experiences that growing up in the diaspora. Another thing is to have grown up in Africa to see what really is happening there, so that at the end of the day, you come to understand that the same thing happened to all of us. So in terms of our language, there was an intention, and still is today, to demonize it, so that as an African, even living in Africa, you will come to hate your language. Well, to show you a very small example, maybe it's a very short one. When I was in primary school, I would be flogged if I speak my language in the school. I will just be disciplined. I will be under punishment because I have spoken my language in the school. Now, you tell me, what is that supposed to mean to me? Should I be proud to speak that language again, or should I hate it? Because now you are flogging me for speaking my language, and I'm in my land, in my home, where I was born. I am being flogged for speaking that language. So what should I do? Anyway, that is where the situation where many Nigeria, many Africa find themselves, and we are told to love our language. We are told to love who we are, but we are being punished for being who we are, and at the same time, we are being told to love who we are. It's quite funny sometimes. Anyway, thank you so much for that, Dennis. I appreciate that. Shara, are you around? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, I can hear you. I can hear you. All right. Because now, of course, as a publisher, people like to understand maybe what are maybe some of the way to promote our literature in the diaspora. Talking of diaspora literature, what would you recommend as the best way to promote it so that more people can write? We want more people to write. What do you suggest?
I think it needs to be sort of a collection and a collective approach, really. From speaking to other sort of publishers in the space, whether they be sort of large ones or smaller ones, international, etc. They're all coming back with very much the same sort of feedback, that there is a very strong presence on social media. But I also feel that alongside that is not just the fact that you're obviously just posting everywhere, etc. It is going to take some sort of more investment in terms of advertising, and very much a collective approach, I think, from the African diaspora to get more involved, do their own research as well, and help to promote, the African people, the African diaspora, and those that are writing in that space. Just one thing I wanted to also touch on as well, Obehi, you mentioned before that those who are able to write should do so, but opportunity for those who are unable to write, and it's a service that I offer. This is the whole purpose of having sort of ghostwriters around, to offer people that wouldn't normally have the other required talent or probably the experience of being able to write, to be able to still document their stories and experiences, because they're just as valued. And that is the job of the ghostwriter. Plenty of our projects have been built in this way, and although it isn't a cheap service to have, I do feel as well that especially in our organization, we definitely promote and work with the authors to really be able to tell their stories, in a very unique way. And as well as that, just going back to what you mentioned before, I do think as well that we do need a lot more unity, around within the African diaspora, in terms of our our documentaries as well as our literatures. These are things that we are in charge of, and I think it's very important that we come together as a group and be able to sort of support each other in this space.
Thank you for that. But what about in terms of challenges? Because there are some people who are not in this space, or maybe who are in this space, but sometimes they are dealing with some challenges. But what are even some of these challenges that people are dealing with, so that we can have, so that it is not allowing us to be able to have more people writing books? Or let me put it this way: what are the challenges that faces the African diaspora literature?
I think that some of the challenges very much involve around not having those literatures, and as I mentioned before, in my talk earlier, that if we are not capturing those stories from the traditional space, into where we are contemporary, in this space, it's very likely to be eradicated. And it's such a shame because there are so many great positive things, that are happening, within the African diaspora. I mean, just one of those things, which I think many of us are even aware of. I mean, just in in Nigeria, I mean, they reckon that between the way that the economy is growing there at such a rapid pace, that they reckon by the end of next year, it will be the most growing economy in the world, globally. And I think that's, it's those kind of things that we want to document, to give the diaspora hope, and as well as other areas of life as well that need to be explored, as sort of aforementioned, and, also just bringing an awareness, it is, the largest diaspora around the world. And if we're not writing about it, especially with the space that we come from, I mean, we get a lot of restriction from anyone outside of the diaspora. So who are the best people, to raise the awareness? Those that are from within it. And there needs to be more of that, it's definitely required.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. All right. Teresa, are you there? Let's ask Teresa to also do some, to respond to a few questions.
Yes, sir, I can.
All right. Okay. So I like the core message that you talked about, that the people, before they can write something, they need to also know the message that they are bringing to the world. So my curiosity is, how do you know your message? How do you say, this is my message? What do you need to do to be able to get to that point?
Authorship or writing experience can be different for different people and for different authors. For me, as a nonfiction author, it has always been required of me to actually go through a specific set of experiences, real life experiences, to extract out either to work something out of me, to reveal something. And a lot of times the experiences will be very traumatic. However, I do believe, there is an opportunity that there are lessons that's being taught to us while we're going through some experiences, if we're listening to it. Oftentimes that as human beings, our immediate thought is, let me get out of this trouble. But if we understand that trouble is not necessarily a bad thing for us, it's actually something to maximize and to shift us to a different place in life. And so I've always said, don't let a good storm go to waste. Make it work for you. There may be some things that needs to blow off for you, and there's things that it needs to reveal another aspect of your character. So if you could get to the other side of that experience, you'll be able to look back to understand that there were certain lessons that was in that experience. If I could be transparent, I usually don't like to share things about my personal self, but I'm learning how to be a little bit more transparent. So with the book that I've just written just now and just released, it's been a multi-year experience wherein I lost my home a few years ago, and I lived in a space of homelessness for about 3 or 4 years. And nobody knew about it. I only told one sibling. My mother didn't know. None of my other siblings know. My employer didn't know or anything. But it was through that experience that I learned a new concept about leadership. I learned a new concept about dominion, to really understand who are we as God's people. What was his original plan for us? And so I guess you say, well, Teresa, it didn't necessarily take homelessness to do that. But what it did do is that it set me aside for a set amount of time to where I was completely focused on learning about this new concept about dominion. And it wasn't just book study, while it was a lot of that, but I also experienced real life situations, because with the employer I was with at the time, I was just put in a leadership position. So I am learning on the job training literally about this particular concept. Now, while it was terrible, I'm not going to front like it wasn't uncomfortable for me, because it was very uncomfortable. However, I do believe that I never would have learned any of those concepts. I would have never have had that opportunity to be in those leadership spaces and to be in leadership rooms to elevate my thinking, had it not been for that experience. And when it was time for me to walk out of there, I had the opportunity, I was given a space of time to be able to pen all of those particular lessons that I was being taught through that experience, which has enabled me to create a new work. So if we are paying attention to what our challenges are, and everything doesn't have to be as severe as homelessness, but if we're going through challenges, we need to understand that those things are there to work for us. And if we're paying attention, there is an opportunity to either create a written work, or it's opportunity to create an invention. It's an opportunity to create a new theory, a new um, precept or perspective. These moments come for us to start kicking in our intelligence, to start creating solutions, and however we need to be able to package those solutions. That is what we need to pay attention to. And oftentimes they align with our natural giftings. So for me, the lessons that I learned aligned with the natural gifting of writing for me. I've always been a writer. I've always been one to kind of jot down how I feel about things. I've always been more expressive in my writing than with my talking, especially when I was younger. So it was something that aligned well with me. While maybe for others, it could be creating something else and using another mode of another vehicle, so to speak, to drive that particular message. So for me, writing, being able to write was just a vehicle to be able to demonstrate the lesson that I learned about how the human family is designed for complete authority as well as leadership, and that we are designed to be guardians over this world. For me as a Black woman, I would definitely say there's a lot of challenges that we face from a racism point of view, and especially in the context of this particular event. But what I find sweet about Dominion is that it takes us above that, Mr. Obehi. It takes us above whatever our hangups is, whether it's religion, whether it's racism, whatever the ism is. There is something about Dominion that takes us above that, to understand that every last one of us is a leader. Every last one of us, we have a domain of influence that we have complete control over, and not control over, but we also have a responsibility to introduce a particular message to either a people, a territory, or a region. So I would just say, just kind of, if we can embrace that as a people, as the African diaspora, if we can embrace that as a people, maybe somehow, somewhere, at some point, that we could come out from under the shadows of our previous oppressions, so that we can elevate and be the citizens that we are supposed to be. Our world is on fire right now. Our world, there's such distrust right now. But every last one of us, there's 8 people that's on the line right now. Every last one of us has something in us, a gifting to be able to solve a particular problem in the world. I think what our adversaries do is that they exhaust us by thinking we're supposed to solve big problems, Mr. Obehi. But we only need to focus on that particular area of influence. And that could be either yourself, your family, or your community. So I would just say for writers, if there is a particular intense moment that you're going through, that moment was not sent to harm you. That moment was sent to pull something out of you or to knock something off of you that you no longer need. And if you're paying attention, there are specific lessons or a pathway forward that got you out of that experience, or there was a new concept that was revealed to your mind. And it wasn't just for you. That experience was not just for you. It was something that you can add to your resume to be able to bring light, shine light to someone else who might be going through something similar. So if we're paying attention, there's a way to extract the lessons if we go back and just pay attention and write it down. And oftentimes writers are documenting what they're experiencing while they're going through, whether it's in a text message, whether it's in a direct message, they might be sending to a friend or to an email. There are things that we are documenting along the way that you can repurpose and actually put into a book. So for me, a lot of those were emails that I was able to create my second book with. And then this one was a lot of experiences that I was able to create this book with, which is more of a, not necessarily a how-to or a self-help, but this one definitely has more practical applications added to this one. So we document whether we know it or not, even if it's not just in a set experience where, oh, well, let me just sit down to my laptop and let me type.
Yeah, thank you so much for that,
Yes,
Teresa.
sir.
Now, for people that want to get a copy of your book, share with them, how can they get a copy of your book and learn more about you? Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. So they can visit my website, teresakpage.squarespace.com. And therefore, to learn more about my book, they can just click on new book. They'll see it on the very front page, and they'll direct them to how to take advantage of that. I am doing a pre-campaign. And so that does include an autographed copy of the book, as well as reference guide, and some other wonderful goodies that are available for some of the gift sets that we're offering. So I'm really excited. So take advantage. The pre-order campaign will conclude at 12 noon on this Saturday. I believe that's June the 29th. So please visit my website, teresakpage.squarespace.com.
Thank you so much for that. So in one word or phrase, how would you conclude this your intervention today?
For writers, it is your responsibility. As I mentioned earlier, if you are a writer and there is a message that's on your heart, it is not a choice for you. It is a mandate. There is something that you're carrying that is to bring a relief or a resolution to one of the traumas that's going on in the world, whether it's with the people, a territory, or a region. So I implore you to take the time, maximize on the technology that is available to you, and begin to pen your story. And don't just pen it, but also do the work to make sure that it is distributed in a way that your assigned domain of influence are able to access that information. So do the work. We're waiting for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right, Tanya, what is your final thought here to conclude this conversation? No, before that, tell the people how they can find you, find your work, and find what you're doing. Please go ahead and share that.
So to connect with me, you can go to my website, tc-publishing.com. My books are on there. You can have a free consultation. Just go to tc-publishing.com and you can connect with me there.
All right, super. Now, what will be your final thought here to conclude this conversation? We have spent a lot of time here talking about different things relating to book publishing and literature, to be specific, about African diaspora. So how would you like to conclude it?
To conclude, now is the time to write your book. And it's about taking action, because action changes things. And remember that your voice matters.
All right. I love that. Your voice matters. People should know that. All right. Dennis, it's your turn. Tell the people, how would they find you? How can they learn more about you? What do you have to say about that?
Okay, so if you want to find out more about the journey to undoing those narratives, challenging those narratives that have shaped your writing voice, and understanding more about who you are as a writer, the best way to contact me is to connect with me on LinkedIn. At the moment, I'm having a new website built. So on LinkedIn, Denise Kelly Roberts, you can find me there, or you can email me at denise@editorschair.com. And you can, reach out to me through that process as well, that channel.
All right. Thank you so much, Denise. Now, what would be your final thought here, considering what we have said today? It can also be maybe that it's a message you have, you were thinking about, you want to leave the people with. Please go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I would say that everyone's story is important, and it's important that you write your story from your perspective in your own voice, and that you write it with a sense of intention and awareness of who you are and what shaped you, so that you can decide how you want to use that material. So I would say that, the message that I want to leave you with is to look into those voices, those narratives that shaped who you are, so that you can turn up on the page with an authentic voice.
Authentic voice. That is what you need to show up with. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Shara, it's your turn. How can people find out more about your publishing and, of course, about you?
Hi there. So the best place to get in contact with me is probably via the website, which is www.beautyandthebeastpublishing.net, and you can email me as well direct, and the team on us@beautyandthebeastpublishing.net.
Now, what is going to be your final thought here to conclude the conversation? This is your final message.
I would echo the sentiments of many of the responses that I heard earlier. It's really integral that we keep this legacy alive, like you said as well, Obe, much long after we are gone, this is probably the only kind of testimonies that we will have, is that written literature, that people can draw from, especially for younger generations. And it is just quite vital to the space. I'm hearing a lot about the authenticity and so forth, but and that's all very true. And also, I do feel as well that there are services that are available to those that don't feel confident about writing, and I think that should be explored more as well, because we don't want to hear just from writers, we want to hear from aspiring authors, people that have never published before, their voice, which is often voiceless, is just as important.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Shara. I appreciate you. And of course, I appreciate all of you for the sharing here. It really have been very, very valuable. The sharing, your experiences, the information that you share with the people. This is what we dedicated this day to. And this important day is going to be remembered for what we have done today, the value that we have added to the people. Thank you so much. Of course, Shara, I thank you so much. And Teresa Page, thank you, Dennis, and Tanya, and of course, Lady E that is gone now. I thank each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Obe.
You're welcome.
Bye now.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Namaste.